The glass doors of Harrington Enterprises slid open with their usual polished hum, but the man stepping in carried no polish with him. His boots were worn, the kind that had seen more mop water than sunlight, and his faded uniform carried faint streaks of bleach that could never quite be washed out. Samuel Rivera was the janitor nobody noticed, which suited him fine most days. He came to work before sunrise, left long after the executives had driven away in their sleek cars, and kept to himself. But this morning, something was different. His daughter, Isabella, was with him. At 7 years old, she was a small, bright-eyed spark of energy, her long dark hair pulled into a ponytail that bounced as she skipped. Normally, Samuel would never bring her to the towering skyscraper where he scrubbed floors and polished stair rails, but the sitter had cancelled last minute. There was no money for another, so Isabella would sit quietly in the corner with her crayons and sketchpad while her father worked. At least, that was the plan. The lobby was already alive with movement. Sharp-dressed employees tapped at their phones. Baristas from the in-house cafe copyright shouted names over the hiss of steaming milk, and a digital screen on the wall looped clips about the company's groundbreaking tech and its staring, charismatic CEO, Evelyn Harrington. She was the face of innovation, ambition, and if the glossy magazines were to be believed, the future of American business. Samuel barely glanced at her face on the screen. To him, she was another untouchable figure in the world above, a world that had nothing to do with him. But fate, as it often does, had other ideas. By late morning, Samuel was deep in the service corridors repairing an industrial vacuum. The machine had wheezed to a stop the night before, and replacement parts were expensive. The supervisors expected him to find a way, because that was what janitors did or they may do. He crouched on the floor with a screwdriver and a prayer, while Isabella sat cross-legged nearby, sketching flowers across a piece of cardboard. That was when the footsteps came, sharp, decisive, echoing down the corridor. Samuel looked up, startled. The woman herself was standing there, Evelyn Harrington, dressed in tailored navy silk, her hair pinned into an effortless chignon. She was flanked by 2 assistants, all efficiency and urgency. "What's wrong with this thing?" Evelyn asked, pointing at the broken vacuum as though it were a personal inconvenience. Samuel scrambled to his feet, wiping his hands on his uniform. "It stopped running last night, Mom. I'm trying to fix it." Her eyes narrowed, assessing both the man and the mess of wires. She wasn't cruel, but her tone was clipped, the kind of tone that belonged to someone who didn't often hear a no. "Can you fix it?" Samuel hesitated, then nodded. "Yes, Mom, I think so." Her lips quirked with a cool amusement. "Then here's a deal. You can fix it. You can keep it. I don't want broken things wasting space in my company." The assistants chuckled, as though it were a witty remark, and Evelyn was already walking away, her heels clicking against the marble floor. Samuel stood frozen, unsure whether she was serious. Keep it? A broken industrial vacuum was hardly a prize. But Isabella looked up at him with wide eyes, her child's mind taking every word at face value. She said, "You can keep it, Papa," she whispered. "That means it's ours now." Samuel smiled faintly, shaking his head. "We don't need a broken vacuum, Major." But Isabella insisted, as children do. And something about her faith in the offhand comment lodged deep in Samuel's chest. Maybe it was silly, but maybe something good could come of it. Days passed. Samuel tinkered with the vacuum in the evenings after work, his hands steady and determined. Isabella sat nearby, humming little tunes she made up on the spot, sometimes standing to twirl in the dim kitchen light. She had always loved to dance, though there had never been money for lessons. She moved with a natural grace, her small feet light as whispers, her arms curving like waves. To Samuel, she looked like sunlight come alive. Then came the day that changed everything. It was the annual company gala, a glittering event held in the atrium of the skyscraper. Employees, investors, and guests in gowns and tuxedos filled the room. Samuel was not invited, of course, but he had been scheduled to clean afterward. Unable to leave Isabella at home alone, he brought her along, promising she would stay out of sight in the storage closet until the night was over. But children have a way of rewriting plans. While Samuel was emptying trash bins in the hallway, Isabella slipped out, drawn by the sound of violins and laughter. She peeked into the grand atrium, her eyes widening at the chandeliers, the sea of shimmering dresses, and the live orchestra playing on stage. And then, before she could think twice, her little feet carried her into the center of the floor. At first, nobody noticed a small girl in a faded dress twirling at the edges of the crowd. But the music swelled, and Isabella spun, her hair flying, her arms stretching toward the light. It was pure, unself-conscious joy, the kind of dancing that comes from the soul. Guests began to pause, their conversations fading as they watched. The orchestra, sensing magic, played louder. Evelyn Harrington herself turned, her champagne glass freezing midway to her lips. She saw the janitor's daughter, although she didn't know it yet, moving with a grace that silenced the room. It was not polished or trained, but it was real. It was the kind of beauty money could not buy. And then Samuel saw her. His heart seized with panic. He pushed through the stunned crowd, scooping Isabella into his arms. "I'm so sorry," he muttered, his face burning with shame. "She shouldn't be here." But Evelyn stepped forward. "Wait." The crowd parted as she approached. Her eyes were fixed not on Samuel, but on Isabella, who clutched her father's shirt nervously. "Who taught you to dance like that?" Evelyn asked gently. "Nobody," Isabella whispered. "I just a broken bar, feel it inside." There was a pause, and something softened in Evelyn's face. She turned to Samuel. "This is your daughter?" "Yes, Mom." "Yeah." She didn't mean to interrupt. "Please forgive us." But Evelyn was no longer thinking about apologies. She was remembering a little girl she once had been, spinning barefoot in a kitchen while her own father, long gone now, clapped to the rhythm. She had buried that memory beneath years of boardrooms and bottom lines, but tonight, this child had unearthed it. The gala ended differently than anyone expected. Instead of more speeches about profits and innovations, Evelyn announced a new scholarship program for children of employees starting immediately, with Isabella Rivera as the first recipient. The room erupted in applause. Samuel stood speechless, his arms tight around his daughter, tears burning behind his eyes. From that night forward, everything changed. Isabella began formal dance training, her natural talent blossoming into something extraordinary. She twirled across real stages, her name whispered in admiration. Samuel, still scrubbing floors by day, fixed the vacuum at last. It stood in their tiny apartment like a strange trophy, a reminder of the day kindness slipped unexpectedly into their lives. And Evelyn, for the first time in years, she slowed down. She began to see the people who kept her empire running: the janitors, the assistants, the unseen faces. She made time for them, listened to them, and learned their stories. She discovered that success was not just measured in profits, but in the lives touched along the way. Years later, when Isabella performed her first solo in a grand theater, Evelyn sat in the front row beside Samuel. The music rose, the lights dimmed, and the young dancer leapt across the stage with a joy that took everyone's breath away. Samuel's hands trembled as he clapped, pride radiating from every fiber of his being. Evelyn glanced at him and whispered, "You fixed it." "And now a broken bar, she keeps it." The words were simple, but Samuel understood. Life had given them something broken: an old machine, a tired man, a forgotten dream. But through love, determination, and a child's unshakable spirit, they had fixed it together. And what they kept was not just a future, but a reminder of the power of kindness, selflessness, and humanity's quiet grace. And so, the janitor's daughter danced on, carrying with her the story of how one careless remark became a promise, and how one small girl reminded a billionaire and the world that sometimes, the most broken things hold the brightest light once you learn to fix them.